World of Warcraft has always been a game full of secrets and hidden mysteries, especially in the earlier days of vanilla. Recently we uncovered some of the lesser known facts from the earliest days of WoW, and today we're diving even deeper into more hidden gems that you might not have known about. Some of the stuff that we're going to be talking about will be more known than others, and for the sake of ease, vanilla and the 2019 classic re-release will be banded together, meaning that some of the video could still apply to the classic game we know today, and other parts will be in relation to the vanilla period. So strap in, grab yourself a snack, as we're about to dive even deeper into the lesser known side of classic WoW. Let's start it off once again with one that still applies to the classic version today. If I was to ask you what the longest possible flight path journey would be, you'd probably be thinking along the lines of Darnassus to Tanaris, Lightsoap Chapel to Booty Bay, or Silithus to Winterspring. But the longest possible flight path is actually from Moonglade to Stone Talon Mountains as a Horde player. You have likely never done this specific flight path because it requires you to skip some early flight masters. You must skip the Barrens, Thunder Bluff, Thousand Needles and the Felwood flight masters, which would result in the flight from Moonglade to Stone Talon Mountains taking 24 minutes and 20 seconds. Yes, 24 minutes. It costs a pretty penny too, 43 silver and 40 copper to be exact. Even Leatrix, a very popular add-on used in WoW, usually can calculate flight times from its database. However, unsurprisingly, this flight isn't in its database. Now, on the flip side to this, the shortest flight path is from the Crossroads to Ratchet, which is as short as 52 seconds and only costing 99 copper. During vanilla, there was a ton of bosses referred to as guild killers. Firemaw, Princess Huhuran, the entire Naxxramas raid, and the most widely known guild killer, Vaelstrasz the Corrupt. Vaelstrasz was so deadly, he had killed the most players in the game out of any mob during vanilla. The WoW website used to showcase game stats back in the day, including that of mobs with the most player kills. This screenshot was taken on November 29th of 2006, which is the final week before the pre-patch of the Burning Crusade. And as you can see, Vaelstrasz has the most player kills on it. And yes, the deadly Defias Pillager was the 9th most dangerous mob. This ogre is a level 40 quest giver in Dustswallow Marsh. He is the only ogre in the entire game that speaks with proper grammar and well structured sentences. Read his name backwards and you'll find out why. Did you know that if you subscribe to this channel, the loot that you need will drop in your next raid? You've most definitely come across the Altar of Storms, which are located in the Blasted Lands and the Burning Steppes. These two locations seemingly have nothing going on there, and that's because in the game they serve no real purpose. They were originally implemented as part of the first concept for a graveyard in World of Warcraft. The Altars of Storms for the Horde and the Altars of Kings for the Alliance. So if you were to die, you would spawn instantly at the closest altar for your faction. This idea came straight from Warcraft 3, but it was scrapped within WoW pretty fast and instead replaced with a system called bind points. This works similarly to your Hearthstone. You would bind yourself to a stone that looks identical to a meeting stone, and upon dying would resurrect at your chosen bind point. And every time you were to come back to life, you would always have resurrection sickness. Later during the alpha going into the beta, this was replaced with a typical graveyard system we know today. To add on to this, the corpse runs you experience in Classic WoW are typically extremely long for a reason. It was an intentional design choice to make the death runs punishing and time consuming. Rob Pardo, who was a lead designer for World of Warcraft back in 2004, mentioned within interviews that dying in the game should feel like a setback, and wanted players to experience the consequences of dying in the open world. There was a time when Arcane Resistance wasn't part of your character's 5 base schools of resistance. Before the patch of 0.9 during the beta, it was instead Holy Resistance. Hunters. They were the last class introduced during the beta, and just like the good old meme, it's a hunter weapon, they were stealing stuff way back then too, because Feign Death originally wasn't a hunter ability. It used to be an ability for rogues and feral druids, which thematically would have made a lot of sense, especially in cat form. There were a few changes between the hunter Feign Death compared to the rogue and druid version though. Back when rogue and druids had this ability, they needed a reagent. This reagent was called a death capsule, and it did not stack. That is some grade A vanilla WoW bullshit right there. And as you probably know, when a hunter's Feign Death timer runs out, the hunter actually dies. But when the Feign Death timer runs out for a rogue or a feral druid, they just kind of stand back up. So while we're on the topic of old feral druid abilities, while in bear form, they had access to a skill called Bear Hug, which cost 50 rage, and while channeling would prevent both the druid and the target from doing anything for 30 seconds, or until the druid decided to let go. This had no cooldown, by the way, so technically if you had enough rage, you could keep someone there for as long as you wanted. There is many more abilities just like this from the alpha version of WoW, but we'll talk about them soon in a different video. Here's a weird random useless fact. US WoW clients have an option to randomize their character's name during character creation, and for some reason European clients do not have this option. Now, scattered throughout Azeroth, you'll find countless memorials and Easter eggs honouring those who worked at Blizzard or simply played the game and had sadly passed away. Just west of the crossroads and slightly up the mountains, you'll find the Shrine of the Fallen Warrior, a memorial to a Blizzard artist named Michel Koiter who tragically passed away at the young age of 19 during the development of WoW. The spirit healer you can see in front of the shrine is named after Koiter and is visible whether you are dead or alive. At the base of the shrine, his initials MK are engraved, and the orc line just above is an exact copy of Koiter's character from the beta. If you've ever wondered how ogres used to look back in the day, this is how they used to look. And if you ever wondered how they used to run, this is how they used to run. Yep, this was a thing. There is an area west of Dunmoreau called Newman's Landing. It's a small house with a dock that's been in the game ever since the game was made. It was allegedly used as an area where characters are dropped upon character creation, before quickly relocating those characters to their respective starting zones during the opening cutscene intro. If you played during the beta and stood on the dock looking towards the house, you would see level 1 characters constantly spawn in for a split second before they would disappear. This supposedly was changed for when the game released and only happened during the beta. Did you know that male dwarfs are the only playable race that have more than one death animation? One where they fall onto their face and one where they fall onto their back. Every other playable race and gender combination only have a singular death animation. I bet whoever created that extra animation was a dwarf hunter main. You can't trust those hunters, they always want more than everyone else. For the majority of vanilla WoW, undead players were really undead, so they could have been targeted by spells such as exorcism. But don't feel sorry for the undead players just yet, because during this time the undead had the most broken racial ability. Will of the Forsaken was a passive ability instead of an active ability, meaning that they could never be feared, charmed or slept, which to some extent also meant they couldn't be polymorphed at this time because polymorph wasn't a base skill for a mage, it was introduced into the game and it replaced a spell called sleep. This of course is absolutely game breaking in terms of PvP balance, and it took all the way until the patch of 1.11 to turn Will of the Forsaken into an active ability, and also at the same time is when undead players were no longer classed as actual undeads, meaning that they can no longer be hit by exorcism and other similar spells. Here is a friendly reminder that gnolls use human skin to create their tents, so be careful when trying to take down Hogger next time. Now, you've probably heard of a guy called Indalamar. For those of you who haven't, he was a warrior player during the WoW beta and was widely known for showcasing how strong warriors were early on. This led him to become somewhat famous amongst the forums and subsequently caused warriors to get nerfed. He was later then hired by Blizzard as an item developer. During Naxxramas there was a quest chain where you learn about a character called Ramaladni, who was a warrior of the Brotherhood. One of the steps required you to bring some materials to restore a ring. That ring is called Ramaladni's Icy Grasp, and you've probably used it once or twice if you raided Naxxramas. This character was a reference to Indalamar, which is Ramaladni spelled backwards. A lot of you are probably aware of the mob changes due to the day and night cycle in WoW. I've covered it once in a previous video where the people of Pyrewood Village are human and friendly during the day, but turn into hostile warguns at night. The same happens in the graveyard of Moonbrook in Westfall, where during the day you will find vultures, but at night you will only find ghouls. I do believe there are other events that happen around the world based on the day and night cycle. I'm sure there's a mob outside of Black Fathom Depths that only appears at night, and if there's any that you guys know, drop it below because I would love to know. Today we definitely dove deeper. If you want to see even more classic WoW secrets, mysteries and facts, let me know below, and also let me know if there's any other random classic WoW facts anywhere from vanilla all the way up until Wrath of the Lich King that you know of and want me to mention in a future video. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed.